Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I'm the founder of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. On this podcast, I share my experience, strength, and hope from recovery. I don't support or endorse any particular 12-step recovery fellowship, and I don't claim to speak for any of them either. My hope is that you will find my words helpful in some way, whether you're in recovery or not. This is episode 83. Flawesome. If you're afraid to let people see your flaws, I can totally understand that. I didn't realize that was what I was doing until I got into recovery and did the 12 steps. But I can see now that I was mired in fear before recovery and had been my entire life. That fear was mainly about being judged by other people, because I wanted to be accepted, I wanted to be well thought of. If you want to hear how I overcame that, listen to episode 6 called Fear of Being Judged, which should actually be called Getting Over Fear of Being Judged. I had this idea buried deeply in my subconscious that I shouldn't have flaws, and that if I was going to have flaws, then I definitely should hide them and keep them secret from people. I kind of hated myself for having flaws, or at least I hated my flaws. And again, I can see now that was all deeply subconscious. What I've learned is that I was judging myself for being flawed. And I was also judging all of you and the world for being flawed. I wanted the world to be different than it was. Things like traffic, the education system, the political system, and other things that weren't working the way I wanted them to, which had me pissed off much of the time. The reason this podcast is called Fragmented to Whole is because I put up all these different facades to try to hide my flaws, and all those facades caused me to become fragmented. Recovery has helped me to integrate all of the fragments into a coherent whole, and it's also helped me get rid of the fragments that weren't truly mine, that weren't truly me and my real identity. Pretty early on in my journey of recovery, I heard someone share the word flawesome. What I understand that word to mean is that we are both flawed and awesome. They're not mutually exclusive concepts. The idea that they are is the epitome of black and white thinking, which many of us, if not all of us, in recovery have when we first get here. We're flawed in our awesomeness, and we're awesome in our flawedness. Part of what makes me a unique person is my flaws. If I didn't have these flaws, I would never have made my way into recovery and achieved the deep and profound life changes that I have had it not been for these flaws. So now I'm pretty grateful for my flaws, which if you had told me that in the beginning, I would have laughed in your face. In the past, I would get super defensive if people even insinuated that I had flaws or pointed out my flaws. Like when I made a mistake, I try to act like I didn't actually make a mistake, which is pretty ridiculous. I didn't know that I was doing it at the time. I can only see it on reflection. Now, when I make a mistake, even if a bunch of people see it, I go, oops, which is a pretty dramatic shift. Not only is oops an acknowledgement that I made a mistake, which I wasn't capable of doing before, it's also lighthearted. It's not, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. What a piece of shit I am. Or, how dare you notice my flaw and point it out to me. So I absolutely love this word flawesome. I use it all the time. And I want to give it to you, and I hope it helps you shift your thinking so that you remember it is perfectly normal to be flawed. You're a human. We're all flawed. It doesn't mean that you're not awesome. And also, if you think you're super awesome, That's great, but it doesn't mean that you're not flawed too. So I think this is a word that's really good for people who have grandiose thinking and for people who think they're the worst pieces of shit that ever walked the planet. I encourage you to move out of black and white thinking that being flawed means you're not awesome, or if you think you're awesome, that means you're not flawed. Come out of the black and white thinking world and into the world of the gray, where we're all flawesome. If you're enjoying my podcast, you might be interested in receiving my motivational and inspirational messages for how to change your life in your inbox. My monthly newsletter is called Happy, Joyous, and Free, and you can sign up at higherpowercc.com. Just scroll down on the homepage and plop your name and email address in there. I'll talk to you all next week, you Flawesome people. That's it for today. Please share this episode with anyone who might find it helpful. If you like what you've heard here, you might be interested in private coaching with me. If that sounds like you, then head on over to barbchat.net, or you can get on my calendar for a free 20-minute consultation to help you make lasting changes in your life, like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. My ideal client is someone who is ripe for change, but I'll coach anyone who wants to be happy, joyous, and free. So if that's you, then go to barbchat.net and get on my calendar. I'd love to chat with you. Please like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast outlet. This helps other people find me. Thanks for listening.